Take a peek at this bike. Does it ring a bell? Well, if you're a die-hard BMW enthusiast, you've probably spotted it before. But if not, please allow me to do the honors. This is a legendary BMW motorcycle straight out of the 1980s. It has survived countless road adventures, but certainly hasn't escaped the wear and tear of time. This leaky carburetor is a testament to that. Once a symbol of class and style, this bike has been relegated to a forgotten relic of the past. And that's where the skilled team at MotoW comes in. Renowned for their incredible work ethic and attention to detail, these experienced craftsmen will attempt to fix every mechanical flaw and transform this vintage ride into a head-turning cafe racer. Now that's a laudable idea, but the execution is a completely different game. Everywhere you turn on this bike, something strategic and important needs to be fixed. Yeah, that looks bad, but it wouldn't stop the restorer from doing his job. As you know, tearing down a bike is a complex task that requires a lot of skill, patience, and sometimes a helping hand. Thankfully, this pro restorer had all three. Together with his partner, they ripped through the bike with speed and precision. Having stood tall from the very beginning of this man versus machine battle, the restorer dropped to his knee here. His enthusiastic partner also grabbed a seat at some point, but that didn't slow them down. Instead, they stayed locked in, making sure every single component was carefully detached, labeled, and stored. Piece by piece, this bike was shedding off components as we inched closer to the next phase. But two major parts still had to come off: the engine and rear tire. Expectedly, the restorer required a little bit more help to get the engine out, and his partner was right on hand to assist. Now that the engine was out, they finally had enough room and access to tear it down even further. With that final twist of the screw, the disassembly phase was officially over. But there was no time to slack or rest, not even for a second, because the restoration was just about to begin. The sight of the revamped frame standing tall against a backdrop of motorcycles was nothing short of breathtaking. I literally had goosebumps staring at it. The only downside was that the transformation happened behind the camera, and we didn't get to see every step of the process. But that's fine, because even though we missed the incredible transformation of the frame, many other components are still waiting for their turn. And this time, we'll have a front row seat for every moment. Next, the restorer moved over to the engine, applying the same precision and expertise he unleashed on the fork and other parts. Speaking about the fork, I had barely mentioned the word when the restorer decided to drench them in black powdered hue. He did the same to the screws, bolts, valves, and other components that make up the fork. Now, it was time to give the engine the same treatment. Next, he stuffed the freshly painted component into an oven to remove the solvent. Interestingly, each piece came out looking far better than before. But the job wasn't done yet. The engine still needed more brushing, sanding, and painting. Once the paint had dried out, it was time to couple the engine back into one piece. Some minutes into the process, the restorer decided to hit the brake briefly to attend to some pressing matter, and this ultimately led him into the reassembly phase. Of course, his beautiful partner was right by side every step of the way. Watching her handle the front wheel with such skill and grace is truly inspiring. I wish my missus was this interested in bikes, if only wishes were horses. Here, you can see the restorers tightening the last bit of screws and bolts on the wheels. Next, the focus shifted to the front end as the restorers teamed up to apply their magic touch to various components. So far, the restoration was going according to plan. The disassembly had come and gone very quickly, and if this pace is sustained, the restoration would be done and dusted in no time. But out of nowhere, the restorers found these pistons riddled with grime and smoke. Ideally, they should have been treated earlier while other parts of the engine were being restored, but it's not too late. With the pistons now sorted, the restorer spends a few extra minutes making sure every bolt and screw around the engine is perfectly secured. Then, he moved over to the other side to continue the restoration. Next up was the already painted valve cover, which needed one last refinement. He also found time to install the engine cover before rearranging and reinstalling the front brake handle. Next up, he displayed the wiring harness and other electrical parts of the bike, signifying that it was time to install them. With the help of his colleague, he assembled the components one after the other, from the headlight to the battery, and the Bosch ignition coil. Next was the installation of a brand new spark plug, a massive improvement compared to the mess we saw earlier. With that in place, he installed the speedometer before moving quickly to the exhaust pipe. Next, he rolled out the heat insulator tape for the exhaust. The presentation was done in grand style, but unfortunately, his first attempt at installing it didn't work out as planned. So he dampened it a bit and tried again. This time, the insulator tape wrapped around the exhaust pipe like a second skin. Here is the bike looking all dapper and sharp, but it was still missing a few parts. Like the seat, which got a nice aesthetic upgrade. And the carburetor. Next, he sealed up the engine with this protective cover, and he turned his attention to the last missing major component of the bike. With every fresh coat of paint and polish, the tank seemed to become even more stunning. But something was still missing. The attention to detail here is superb, but what followed next was even more impressive. With the tank fully restored, the finish line is more or less in sight. Just a few final adjustments and we'll know whether the restoration is successful or not. But before we get to the moment of truth, let's take a crash course on the history of this legendary machine. Launched at the Cologne Motorcycle Show in 1985, the BMW R80 quickly earned a reputation for reliability, smooth handling, and classic German engineering. Its shaft-driven system and air-cooled boxer engine made it a favorite among long-distance riders. But what truly set it apart was its adaptability. Thanks to its lightweight frame, streamlined look, and single-seat configuration, it is a perfect canvas for cafe racer conversions. And as a result, it has been embraced by several custom builders worldwide, including the experts at MotoW, who have taken it upon themselves to rebuild this icon. So far, they've done an absolutely outstanding job. And I mean it! But can they find the motivation to finish the job? Well, it's needless to say they can, because just as I was pondering on that question, the restorers were putting finishing touches on the BMW logo and refining the oil. Once these important procedures were completed, it was time for the big reveal. I'm not one to exaggerate, but if I were to rate the restoration based on aesthetics alone, I'd give it a 15 over 10, because it's so beautiful, it's hard to describe it with words. I'm not one to exaggerate, but if I were to rate the restoration based on aesthetics alone, I'd give it a 15 over 10, because it's so beautiful, it's hard to describe it with words. I mean, it has to be one of the most beautiful things I have seen in my life. But which part did you enjoy the most? Let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget to check out other amazing restoration videos we've got on the channel.